So when it is attached to the following word, mean will tend to have the noon assimilate into the mem. Or you can take the word Judah. It'll actually certain weak letters will cause it to behave differently. So in the case of Yehudah, it would try to assimilate the noon into the yod. But then there's the rule that we talked about, Schiman Levi, that if you have any kind of a sibilant, a mem, a noon, a lamed, a vav, or a yod, with a vocal shava under it, with a doubling, it tends to lose the doubling, and that's what happens here. It loses the doubling, and then the yod is just treated like a vowel letter, and it ends up being mihuda rather than mi Yehuda, which is what you would have expected otherwise. Now, before guttural letters, which cannot be doubled, the noon, and this is a typo in your textbook. By the way, if you see typos that you're pretty sure about, you can actually do a right click and say report typo and tell them that the bet should be a noon and explain what you think is there and submit that. I actually just did that when I recognized the mistake here. But anyway, before guttural letters, which cannot be doubled, the noon, to make the correction, is not replaced by a dogish forte, but instead the short heroic becomes a long sere. Again, in my imagination, what you're trying to do, you're trying to assimilate the noon, so you're trying to put a dogish, a little dot in the aleph. The aleph says, no, I'm a weak letter, I can't do that. But then you say, no, the rule is we need to, assimilate the noon into you. But then what it does, it spits it out and it falls down and ends up being right beside the heroic. And so you end up with two dots, a sere, rather than a doubling that takes place. That's the non-scientific way of analyzing it, maybe to help your memory. Otherwise, you can say, to compensate for being unable to double the aleph, you compensatory lengthen. Well, since the article is a guttural letter, this rule applies to nouns with the article as well. So here you have ha'ir, the city. If you want to say from the city, you'd put preposition mean. You try to double the hey. It spits it out. It lands right by the heroic, and you end up with a longer vowel, me ha'ir, from the city. Now, unlike prepositions ba and ka and la, the mem does not squash out and replace the article. It will always be separate. Well, let me go over the vocabulary. He gives you a plural verb, a masculine plural verb. Halak is to walk or to go. Halaku means they went, they walked. Then he gives you some nouns. The word for temple is hekal, which is a temple or a palace. The plural can either be masculine or feminine, as it turns out. This happens to be a loan word all the way back to a language called Sumerian, which is a non-Semitic language, the oldest known written language, where originally was Agal, which meant big house. A temple was a big house, and a palace was a big house. And then it was loaned into Akkadian, and from there eventually into Hebrew. Here you have the word Yehudah, Judah, which is related to the word for praise. So Leah named her son Yehudah after saying, I will praise Hodeh, the Lord. And the name Judah means may he be praised, or something like that. And then you have milchama, war or battle. And then you have nahar, river. Again, it has some gender confusion in terms of the ending. It's sometimes shows up as an oat ending and sometimes as a hierarchiod mem masculine plural looking ending. The word for book is sefer. By book, you should understand it to mean scroll, because they didn't have books as we know it. Or it could even just be a piece of paper, would be called a sefer. And then Adah is counsel or advice. Don't have a whole lot to say about that. And then the word mitz is tavek. But actually, in most cases, it'll show up in constructions that will contract the vowels together. And so you'll end up with a form tok, where the kamatz and the vav and the segol have combined together just to form a holem vav. And so from the midst of would be mitok, in the midst of would be batok, but you usually see it as tok. In the midst of something, very rarely do you see it as tavek, which is the dictionary form. And then preposition mean, we talked a lot about, means from, or in some cases some of. And alternative forms are me or may, where me followed by doubling, or may, where the noon has tried to compensatory lengthen and couldn't, and comes back to lengthen the vowel. And then the word ata means now, adverb, at this time, now. So the exercises translate into Hebrew some of the irregular plural forms. So the word words will have that vowel reduction process, where it starts off with davar with the kamatz, but when you add your hierarchiod mem ending, this syllable under the dalet becomes propretonic, and so must reduce to shabah. And the other forms either have some sort of vowel reduction or are just irregular or the like. And then in section B, you're to read aloud, as you should, as often as you can in Hebrew. Read aloud and translate into English. Ha'anashim ve'hanashim ba'Yisrael. The men and the women are in Israel. And on down the list for those exercises. And that is our introduction to lesson 8. Shalom, Lahit wrote. Have any questions? Put them on forums.